Good morning, or at least it is on this February 10th, the birthday of our beloved daughter Laura, who is hiding in the rice paddies somewhere in Vietnam. Probably doesn't want to be a part of this. This episode will be number 9. It's going to be entitled The Dandelion Wine Caper. The story is a quite perfect example of how stupid high school, teenage, young adults can be. Should leave no doubt in your mind as to that. The story takes place for me in high school. And was precipitated, I think, because at that time, in my grandmother's basement and our basement, we had a great number of crocks, old, real honest-to-God ceramic crocks. And we had the jugs, if you can imagine a gallon milk jug, and most of you hopefully have seen a few of the hillbilly movies where they throw it up on their shoulder and take a slug. Those things were available to us. And the main character probably, because I don't remember who all was involved at one time or another, would have been Jim Burt, Paul Jones, and Marcus Stevens. All good friends, all equally oblivious to the harm we could do to ourselves and the surrounding environment. This is one of the stories that was requested by my children, and I'm hopefully going to dedicate this, though, to my great-grandchildren, who are either in high school or college, the youngest set, the first set, I should say. So they're at a prime time to learn a valuable lesson. Hopefully, by now, my own children have learned to open the bottle and drink out of it, one that has been sterilized, etc. I don't like the time it's getting away from me again. I don't understand how I'm going to learn to do this. Anyway, once the idea had originated that we had all of this paraphernalia, which would make for wine, my grandmother mentioned that years ago her family used to make dandelion wine. Well, it was spring, and there was an abundance of dandelions, and so we decided that we'd proceed with this. Actually, we did it under the auspices of my mother, who acted as a supervisor, but for the most part, her advice was ignored to our downfall. Now, we're talking a big crock, and I don't know how many gallons you could put in there. That thing might have held 20 gallons, I don't know. It was big. And there were at least half a dozen or more jugs. So we washed the jugs, washed the crock, and set out to get our dandelions. We soon found out that we didn't have anywhere enough dandelions, and so the group of us ended up in the city park one afternoon, and we're happily walking through the grass, plucking the beautiful little yellow flowers. Now, it so happens that our chemistry teacher, Mr. Lodge, who will come to the fore again in another story, happened to drive by, and we happened to see him, and he happened to see us. And he was an interesting gentleman, pretty much out of Hollywood. If you wanted to make a Mad Professor type movie, he would fit very well, because all he did when he drove by was grin. So he knew what we were up to. Now, having once gathered all of the dandelions, we brought them home, got out my grandmother's recipe, which I hope still exists to this day somewhere in this house, as it probably would produce a wonderful wine if followed. Now, part of what we were to do was to put the dandelions in the crock along with cold water, and then let it come to room temperature, and then we proceeded with the yeast, etc. Well, being typical high school students, we decided that, what did they know about making wine? We'd speed the process up. So we used warm water and put our yeast in, and then we covered our crock and we put it downstairs in the basement. That basement, I probably ought to discuss it another time because of its age and the way it was laid out. It was ideal for this. We ended up with a shelf about 5 feet off the ground that was cement, perfect for storing our new adventure. Well, the long and the short of this story is that we waited and waited for fermentation to take place, which it did, and we were delighted at the speed at which it went, and everything was proceeding as it should. Then one unfortunate evening, we decided that surely that wine was, ready for consumption, and that we would give it a try. So we poured some into the jugs. In fact, we filled all the jugs. And then we set about to enjoy the nectar of the gods. Well, that wine tasted, and I think using the word wine is a loose interpretation of some sort of chemical concoction that no human being should go near. But anyway, we tried drinking some, and Marcus and I started off with his project, and were later joined by Jim. And if anybody else was involved, I have no recollection of it. But it tasted so bad, it was not drinkable. And so Marcus came up with a wonderful idea that maybe we could mix it with orange juice, which would, make a more of a acceptable cocktail. Well, all it did was make it palatable enough that you could choke it down. Now, once you've got 4 or 5 of those under your belt, it's kind of like a martini, You'll continue to drink them, whether you like it or not, or can taste it or not, which we proceeded to do. We managed to borrow my dad's Jeep that evening. They were gone. My folks were gone somewhere. Anyway, we borrowed the Jeep, which was a Jeep station wagon. That also will get described later because it involved a number of our more enlightened activities. And we took off in that Jeep. Now, I have no idea where we went, who we saw, what we did. All I can recall is the next morning. And about 8 o'clock, when my dad came in, he was kind enough to wake me up, which probably was a lot harder than it sounds, and informed me that I had a problem and that he was walking to work, and when he came home in the evening, he expected the Jeep to be cleaned and polished. And by the way, could I move it out of the middle of the street? So, forced to get up, I don't know how I did, but somehow I did. We went out, or I went out, and there was a Jeep parked somewhere between, perfectly parked, right in line with the sidewalk, only it was 3 to 4 feet out into the street. Unfortunately, the inside of that vehicle was, shall I say, badly desecrated and in need of a hose. Fortunately, the Jeep was designed to be hosed out because it was designed for a mountain car. So, again, I managed to clean it, park it correctly, and somehow get through the rest of the day. Now, my time is up. I've had almost 15 minutes and I can't believe it. We now know the results of that, except there was one other aftermath. Not sure what it was that had gone wrong. We decided, well, maybe if we distilled it, it would come out okay. And we'd have distilled dandelion wine. So we rigged a distillery downstairs in the basement and proceeded to distill the remaining wine. After getting a jar full, which would be, the size you would use in canning, we then took it to our chemistry teacher, Mr. Lodge, who had observed this from the beginning, and asked him if he could run an analysis on what we had so that we would know what we had produced. He did so, and we later were informed that we had a almost 100% perfect batch of acetic acid. Now, I'll leave it to you to educate yourself on acetic acid, and you draw your own conclusions. I'm sure you have by now about how smart this whole thing was. Now, there is a lesson to be learned here. And the lesson is, for my grandchildren, who now have the advantage of wine-making kits and beer-making kits and whatnot, just be damn careful what you do. With that, I'll continue with another story soon. Have a nice day.